Hey everyone, let's clean some pens. All right, here are some of the pens we're going to clean today. I have some different examples here. I've got an Edison here, which is a cartridge converter, and the nib unit does come out. I've got a Schaefer 100 here, also a cartridge converter, but in this case, the nib does not come out. I have a Sailor cartridge converter, where the nib, of course, doesn't come out. I've got a Twisby Eco piston filler, and last but not least, we have a Pilot Custom 823 vacuum filler. And first off, I want to show you a couple of things that we use here in the shop along with cleaning. I'm going to start with this guy here, the nib saver. Basically a little drain for your sink. That way, if you put it in there, then if you drop something, it's not going down your drain. Also, bulb syringe, very, very useful. I've got my syringe here. And then along with that, I have the needle filler, this long extension. That'll come in handy. We'll show that in a little bit. And I have my Sailor maintenance kit. This is a cool thing. We'll see that. And then, of course, I've got some pen flush. I have a couple of cups of water. I've got one regular water. I've got one here that I've put some pen flush in it. So if we need that, we can use it. And of course, always remember to have your dirty rag ready for use. All right, so let's start first with our Edison here, cartridge converter where you can take the nib unit out. So I'm going to unscrew it and take the barrel off. You see I've got some ink in there. I'm just going to dump that out, what little is left. Now, if you have a converter, one of the things you can do is you can just put this in water and then suck up water and then just keep operating the converter. That might get a little tiresome, but you can do that. If you don't have the bulb syringe, it's just simply going to be, it's going to make a mess of your water, but that is one way to do it. The other way to do it is, let's take this out. I'm going to fill up my bulb syringe with some water. And we're going to stick it in the back here, and you want to try to make sure that there's a good seal on it. Otherwise, the water will come shooting back at you. Sometimes it helps to wear a smock or something, but you see I'm forcing the water through. If you're still having problems with it, since this one is a threaded unit, this uses a Yovo number 6 nib, you can unscrew it, and you can just drop that into your water and let it soak for a while, and then you can put it back and try it again. We can take a look at the converter while we have it here. If you're having a problem with your converter, I'll use my syringe. I'm going to fill it up, and then I'm just going to force that in there. I may even use some of this solution here that's got some pen flush in it, and you'll see some of the bubbles, the soap in there. And so what we want to do is we'll want to flush that in there a couple times. And then remember to flush it out with regular water afterwards. Now, if you do have a type of converter that is disassemblable, this part here will just usually just come off, and then you can pull out the whole piece. Grab your Q-tip, and now we can get in here and clean this whole bit out. Some of them are easier than others to get apart, but most of them just unscrew at this joint. When you're putting it back, make sure to put a dab of silicone right on the end here on your piston head, and I also put some right here on the sides for this mechanism so that when it goes in and out, it goes smooth. Screw it down, and your converter is clean. And again, we're just going to unscrew the barrel. I do have a converter in here. I'm just going to get rid of the ink that's in there. And again, if you wanted to, you could sit here and you could try to get this all clean. Now with the Schaefer converter, the converter is gray to begin with, so it gets a little bit tough to see what is in there. So we're going to take this off. Switch out our water here. And if you can, you get a nice, make sure you get a nice seal on this, otherwise this will come and hit you in the back. Good push, and you can see that pretty much all the ink now is gone. It's coming out pretty clear, and that's what you want. And again, if you need to, if it's very stubborn, you can put a little bit pen flush in there and force it through, and you'll see it'll fizz up like that. Just flush it through with regular cold water, and you'll be in good shape. So this nib doesn't come out. It's not threaded like a Jowo nib is, but we can get it real clean with just using the bulb filler. And then what I'll do here after I'm done is I'll leave these pens usually open so that they can dry out overnight before I fill them the next day. We're going to look at something different here. So this is a King of Pen. I'm going to unscrew it. Now this one I've got a cartridge in. I'm just going to take this out and set this down. Now Sailor makes what's called a maintenance kit, which is a pretty neat little thing here. And it comes with a syringe, and then there is an adapter here. And this adapter's got a couple little dimples on the side, and then this just screws into your syringe. Okay? And then this and here goes into the Sailor. So it sticks in there, and it really, you can even do it just in the water if you want. I'd like to do the first couple of passes in the sink, but you can see how quickly and how easily, just running this up and down, how quickly that water becomes clear. So for Sailor, it's very, very easy. We can use this adapter available in the Sailor maintenance kit to flush out the pen. Now, when you've got a cartridge, as I have here, and I'm cleaning the cartridge, sometimes I'll have a syringe and I can't get down to the bottom of the cartridge to clean it. And maybe it's got some old ink in there or something, or maybe using a platinum carbon black, which is a little bit heavier ink and it stains a little bit more. I'm going to switch to my needle filler here, and I'm going to fill this with ink, and now I can get all the way down to the bottom, and I'll kind of aim this at the side, but then it enables me to get all the way down there. And again, on these I may use a little pen flush in there to make sure we get it clean. And always flush last with regular water. Shake it out, and then you've got a nice clean cartridge for the next time you want to fill it up. Next up, we're going to take a look at the TWSBI. This is the Eco. So piston filler, a little bit different. On this particular one, the nib is not designed to come out. Of course, you can pull it, but we're going to assume that you don't need to. And I'm going to expel this. And now sometimes also what I'll do too is if there's a lot of ink and I don't want to get my jar of water super inky, I'll rinse out here first until I see most of it has come out. I'm just going to put it in here, and unfortunately on a piston filler, you pretty much have to make the operation up and down as many times as you can to get it clean. Now, some piston fillers, you will be able to unscrew the nib unit on a couple of them, TWSBI 580, even pretty much any Pelican you can get a nib unit off of. It's actually almost the color of my water, so let's change this out again. You can kind of give it a little bit of a shake too. On piston fillers too, you also want to make sure you're trying to get out as much ink as possible. And a lot of pens, what I do is I like to grab the pen firmly in my hand and I'll shake it to get any ink out, especially if I want to ink or water, if I want to ink it up right away and I don't want to wait for it to dry. Just grab it real firm and give it a downward flick, and that'll get a lot of the water out. So that one turned out pretty good. This is a vacuum filler. Similar, also VAX 700 will be the same way. Nib on this one is not designed to be removable. So on this one, it looks like I've got some kind of red ink in there. Put it over the sink, and I'm going to pull this out. Remember, this pen fills on the downstroke. So it will expel ink on the downstroke. And already you can see how much ink was in there. I might do that another time here just to make sure I get something out. And again, I'm going to run this under the water a little bit to try to get some of that residual out. But I'm going to put it in and I'm going to let it sit there so it gives it as much time as possible to soak up. That one actually filled pretty good on the first try. But we just have to kind of do this a few times. And these really do clean fairly well because they do take in such a large capacity of ink that it will help flush the inside of the pen out each time. I'm going to change this out again. So I like to change out my water fairly frequently. You can see it's kind of getting there. The red's got a little bit more of a little more dye in it than other colors, but this one might take a while. Now, if you run into this is just taking forever, what you can do is you can just leave your pen sitting up to the section here in water and just let it soak. Fill it up and then let it soak, and you will see the ink actually drain out of the pen. I'm going to drop this in a little bit of pen flush here, and I'm going to tip it around. Vacuum fillers are really kind of some of the most difficult pens to get clean, but you can get them clean. And I think we're getting there pretty close here. You'll see that the reddish tint is going away on this pen. And of course, flush with the water a couple times to get all that residue out. Now we still have a little bit of work to do. I would probably let this pen soak. You can still see a little bit of the pink and the reddish dye in there from the ink. I definitely would probably let this soak if I felt I needed to get it cleaner. Try to resist the urge to have it make sure a pen is squeaky clean. It just simply really more stress and strain on the pen than was probably originally intended. So if you're going from obviously if you're going from a dark color to a lighter color, you want to get it as clean as possible. But if you're going from a light color, if I was going to a black, I wouldn't be worried about the little bit of red that's maybe in here still, because the black is going to cover it up, or the darker color is going to cover it up. But if you're really worried about it, just fill it with some pen flush, let it soak overnight, and that will probably be the best solution for that. I hope you enjoyed that. We received a few questions, so let's take a look at those. Mr. M.G. Ward says, I find it tough to completely empty a vintage ink sac while cleaning to swap inks. For example, an old Waterman 52 or the like. Any tips? Well, sure. Lever fillers are going to be a little bit more complicated to clean out, but you want to just use plain water, just put it in a cup, and you want to just put it in just above the nib, right into this section area, and you can let that soak. If it's hard rubber, if it's a Waterman, usually the ebonite sections and the feeds don't discolor, so you don't have to worry about putting that in water, but then let it sit there for a while, and then you just flush in and out with water. It's probably the best way to do it. Terry McCormick says, what's the best way to clean pens that have a sac? So yeah, you just want to use the lever. You don't want to overuse it, but let it fill completely. Let it sit in the water and give it a time for the water to clean out the ink inside the sac, and then remember to change the water frequently. Chad Herring says, I'm particularly looking for tips on cleaning out converters that have sat a while with darker ink, anything to speed up the process of flushing them out with water. Well, Chad, many converters are possible to take apart. And they will unscrew right at the back, and then you can pull the whole part out, get your Q-tip in there. If yours is one of the type of converters that's a little more difficult to get apart, or you can't get it apart, then I would recommend maybe putting some pen flush in there, letting it sit overnight, try to get a Q-tip in there, and you can even use a syringe to force water in there after you've let it sit, some pen flush in it, and then that should clean it out pretty well. Bob Burrier says, for cleaning, I would appreciate your covering when to remove the nib and feed and not, and the best way to do this. maybe demonstrate the pliers, the use of sonic cleaning baths, and list goes on. Well, first off, let's talk about the pliers. The pliers that we sell are actually section pliers, and they're meant for removing the section from a pen, a vintage pen, not necessarily the nib. The best way to do it is really going to be your fingers. If it's a threaded nib, then it's pretty easy to just unscrew it. Make sure you've got a converter pulled out first. If it's a friction fit nib and feed unit, then if you have to take it apart, you should just pull it straight out. I don't usually recommend pulling a nib and feed if it's a friction fit. I don't recommend it under normal circumstances, but if it's been a long time or it's given you especially a hard time, then maybe you can pull it and clean. But that's probably the easiest way to do it. Unscrew it if it unscrews, and if it doesn't, then just let it soak a little bit longer. Ultrasonic baths, yes, I do have them. I like ultrasonic cleaners, but however, with some of the other things that we showed you here, the bulb syringe, sometimes it's not even necessary. So hope that answers that question. Mark Collins, should we use a sonic cleaner on the pens? Often, question mark. There are some inexpensive ultrasonic cleaners you'll find on the market. They can be $20, $30. They're going to be small jewelry type ultrasonics. They will work fine. The one issue you will have with some of those are the timers are set for very short period of time. So they can be as short as 2-3 minutes up to as most 8 minutes. So you'll put your nib or your part in the ultrasonic and turn it on, and then in 8 minutes you'll have to come by and check it. So I use them quite often, but if it's been a pen that I just recently inked, oftentimes I'll find that the bulb syringe will just get it cleaned out and there won't be any need for an ultrasonic. Jacob Sampson asks, is there a different cleaning process for ebonite feeds versus plastic? Not necessarily. Everybody hears about ebonite discoloring when it gets in contact with water. However, most of the time, like I mentioned before, with hard rubber pens, the sections in the feeds having been covered most of the time aren't usually vulnerable to discoloration. So I would say you're safe to go ahead and put it in the water and do everything you would normally do on an ebonite feed with plastic. So there you have it, how to clean your pens. If you have any further questions, be sure to leave them in the comments below. Like this video, subscribe to this channel, and you can check us out online at andersonpens.com or our stores in Appleton and Chicago. Thanks for watching.